Hi.
Hello.
I totally screwed this up. It's awesome. Where are y'all?
Can't see anyone but me and Fab. Can't see Paul.
I can't see anybody except for Fab.
There we
There
go.
we
Oh, there we
go.
go. Hi,
Oh
everyone.
dear.
The best intro ever. I guess I'm tired. More tired than I thought I was. So yeah, let's just jump right back in. Customer journey today. Hi, Alyssa. Thanks for joining us.
Hi.
I think this will be an interesting topic because oh, hi, Paul. I guess I
No, I
should
was
say
saying
hi
hi
to
to
you.
Alyssa, not you, Fab.
Oh,
Hi,
yeah,
Alyssa.
that's what I figured. We spoke yesterday, so it's kind of like old news by now.
Yeah.
um, so today we're going to talk about customer journey, which is interesting. In my experience, I find a lot of sales leaders don't take it into account, and I find that's really reflects a lot in terms of a lot of their company's overall revenue performance when the sales customer journey is not taken into account. Um, just because I find a lot of sales approaches are done with the sales point of view in mind and not with the customer's point of view in mind. And when you do work on a customer journey, you start really identifying like clear gaps in how the process works, and you can clearly see how sales get impacted by that. But Alyssa, I'll let you intro the topic.
Yeah. Well, in linking to that too, in not seeing the whole sales journey or customer journey and what they've been through or what they've experienced before landing on you is incredibly informative and important for a sales executive to have an understanding of. And also, if you don't have much of a grooming process before they get into that sales call, um, how many people are you losing by not having that? So maybe you could double or triple the number of people you end up on a sales call with if you have groomed them and supported them along a quote unquote journey from being a lead into an actual legit sales call along the way. So maybe the sales team could double if you actually had an effective journey mapped out in advance of that formal sales call, because there's a lot of sales, marketing, lovely hybrid that happens in grooming that prospect to eventually be a potential valuable sales call
Hmm.
person.
So I have a question. So, being friends with both of you, I have inadvertently learned what a customer journey is, but I'm putting myself in a very typical SMB sales leadership role. And it might sound very asinine and silly as a question, but maybe define a little bit what a customer journey is, and what you mean by that, and why the sales leader needs to be aware of that customer journey, because he or she might be saying, well, we know what we have to sell, we know what questions we have to ask. What do you mean journey? Like, there's no journey. This is who they are. They know their objectives. We're going to help them out. Like, what do you mean? I'm just going to bring them through my sales process. That's their journey, right? um,
It's funny how you
so
say I'll bring them through my sales process, and that's
exactly,
their
yeah.
journey. That's awesome. but
Exactly.
go for it, Alyssa. I know you build customer journeys with your
Oh,
clients,
I
so I'll let
mean,
you
sure.
take
I
it.
mean, the way I see it, and predominantly working with smaller businesses where the marketing and sales teams aren't terribly siloed, and arguably it's even more important when they are siloed. But let's imagine people are wearing lots of hats. There's a founder and they've got a pretty small team. I see customer journey as being what happens the entire process of a lead turning into a client. And what experience do they have with each of the touch points in that company? What kind of experience do they have through multiple channels or tactical execution along the way that is slowly grooming them from a lead that maybe saw whatever that hook was out there in the world, let's say an ad or a referral, pick something, it doesn't matter. Um, what is their experience then with your organization holistically until they become a sign on the dotted line client? And it's that whole picture. And it looks very different with every company. There's no
And
cookie cutter way to do it.
yeah, and if I can add
But
to
there is
that,
one thing that's
hold
similar
on.
though, is that
I just want to add something
oh,
quickly because I mean, to me,
of
it's
course,
like it's beyond the customer, or like beyond, right? It's about what happens after they become a customer too. And I think like that's a lot of places where, I mean, the work that I see, that's often where it gets even more forgotten, right? Like everything is about bringing them to the customer, but in most businesses, the actual gold, so to speak, is is what happens afterwards, right? Is because what happens afterwards is also like, how do they renew? How do they upsell? How do they, like, and that's part of their journey within your company too. So
Yes.
Okay,
Oh my
but
gosh,
before
100%.
before
That's
we
like
go
a
there
whole other
though,
side.
yeah,
there's a whole other, you're right. That's a whole other side and it's super important. But before you go there, so again, if I'm just, a sales leader who's not super marketing savvy, you're talking about what my customer feels from the first point I speak to him to when, let's say, Fab, we're going to cut it off to when they buy for the first time. So what are they, how am I reaching out to them? How am I talking to them? How am I touching them? And, and how am I touching them to a point where they go from being unaware to, yeah, I want to do business with this company. How they're feeling, not what you're saying to them, but how they're feeling through that process, right? Their
mhm.
point of view. So awareness, consideration, decision kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
yeah, and it's like, 'cause that's it. It's, I mean, again, Alyssa, I know you have more experience than I do in terms of building or helping a customer understand their customer's journey, but or helping a company understand their customer's journey. I'll get there. But it's that's it, because it's important to understand how and what a client or potential client needs throughout their process, right? Like before they're aware of, and I mean, if you stick to the old awareness, interest, desire, and all that, like what happens before, how do they collect information, how do they get information? Like every audience is different, and then what information do they want before speaking with sales, like what kind of research are they doing before, because we know at this one, and I think most sales leaders have accepted it and have seen it with their sales team, is like most customers come in much further down their purchasing process than they used to, right? Like a lot of buyers used to rely on the sales team to share information. That's really no longer the case. But you have to understand how and what kind of information they're looking for, and while they're speaking to your sales team, you have to understand what they're looking for to be able to really build an interesting sales process. Because yeah, otherwise it's about me, like, right, like it's about what I need, and we talk about it all the time, Paul. Like the answers I need to go get, like what's their critical event, or who's the decision maker. Like that's important for me as a salesperson, but that's not like customer couldn't care less about you knowing who the decision maker is, right? Like in their mind, they're not entering a conversation with a salesperson thinking like, oh man, I really have to remember that I need to share who the decision maker is in this whole process. So that's where the customer journey, I feel, gets really interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think it's also, I hate to say this, but it's also a state of mind. I think if you can, and maybe you guys didn't think of this because you're both marketing people and you're always thinking of the customer, but as a salesperson, as a sales leader, if you can get your salespeople and your organization to think about the actual customer's state of mind, well, that's a state of mind that you should be in. I should always be considering, what is my typical customer going through in their decision making process to get from unaware to wanting to buy from me. So
Yeah.
it definitely is a state of mind. And what I say to salespeople is, if you can put yourself in your client's shoes, hence think about the customer journey, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And I would say too, it's really important as well for sales and marketers to be connected as well, because it's important for a salesperson going into a call, I think, to have a sense of where the prospect they're talking to has come from, right? And marketing could tell them if they have a good marketing system in play, if there's a good ad generating machine, if there's a good lead gen machine, the marketing team can inform them of this. Is this someone you're talking to who has gone through all of their emails, watched a webinar, and engaged in an online ad, right? That person has been through 4 or 5 touch points at that point before choosing to get on a call with them, which most likely means they know a whole lot about the company already. They know a lot about your services that you're offering, and they may be an easy, either a warm or a hot lead, or someone you don't really have to sell too hard, or you go in there knowing that they know the basics. So you're not going in with a sales spiel and spinning your wheels about nonsensical stuff that they're like, yeah, I know, that's why I'm talking to you right now, right? So you can set yourself up for success knowing the journey that that prospect has already been on to date and how they've interacted and connected with your company so far, to be able to set up for the most success in that sales call.
Yeah, absolutely, makes sense.
So flying blind doesn't help you if you've got a cold lead or a really warm lead who's already like gotten all the freebies and interacted and connected in lots of ways and commented on your Instagram or whatever that might be. That's a very different prospect than someone who's a cold call or an organic
Yeah.
search that just clicked. I want to chat with someone.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I dare to say it. I dare to say at that level, if you're unaware of all the touch points you've had, you're right. You're having a different conversation. So that elevator pitch or that first time conversation varies quite a bit on depending on what they know about you. Like if they're a self qualified lead and they're asking to speak to you, you've done a great job of marketing. You're not going to say to him, you're not going to say to them, I'm this person from that company. I know where you're from. Yes, okay, I'm from this company. Can I just know what it is that's interesting you in us rather than doing your whole regular spiel? So that's a very important point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can press them by saying, "Hey, my team let me know that you attended our most recent webinar. How'd you like it? Did you have any specific questions? I know we talked a lot about this product. I'm wondering if you're interested in learning more about that." Like, it can be a huge benefit to you as a
Icebreaker. Yeah,
salesperson to have that background.
Mhm.
absolutely. I entirely and totally agree with you.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think on an operational side of things, it gives you a good insight as to how well you're doing, right? Because like the sales process is just like a very tiny portion of that customer's journey, right? There's a whole thing that happens beforehand, and and I know it's less the scope of today's show, but that what all that happens afterwards. And so what you're doing is like you're kind of exploding from the sales process, which is obviously critical and important, um, but there's a lot of stuff happening before and afterwards that also needs to be taken into account when you're building your projections, because it's one thing to be able to say we convert 40% or we close 40% of our deals or 30% of our deals, but what do you need to be able to get to those 30%, right? And how many renewals are you going to get from those 30? Like there's a lot more discussion going on in a business, more than just the first time top line revenue that a salesperson will generate.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And the lowest hanging fruit, to your point, is the whole second part of that machine of maintaining, delighting, upselling your existing clients,
Yeah,
because they're the easiest ones to sell to, that's for sure. And if there is no system in place to groom that even before lead gen, that's a huge miss on an organization.
exactly. And I mean, we've all seen the numbers of, like it's easy, so much cheaper, less expensive to get an existing customer than a new customer. But I think it's critical to, yeah, like you said, right? And that's part of the journey. Like how does a customer, yes, research and identify when they have a problem, and that's like the pre-sale, but then the post-sale is like how do they continue, right? Like how are they going to continue? How are they going to renew or upsell or cross sell, like you said? And to make sure that then your sales team is able to identify the leads that they've signed on, the customer that they've signed on, how can they identify the ones that are more apt to upsell or cross sell? In the same way that how do they identify the leads that are more apt to do a first close, right? Like
Exactly.
through grooming and and all that stuff. There's certain leads that are more apt to close than others. There's the post sale as well.
Yeah.
All that
And
can
I don't
happen
think it's
there.
even all on the sales team to do that upselling, right? So if the sales team is communicating effectively with marketing and vice versa, sales can say, "Hey, we've got a whole lot of clients who actually don't use our new product but could be really interested and good candidates for it. Marketing, can you put together a campaign or an email campaign or an ad campaign? Most likely an email would probably be most effective, that informs and educates and offers value to those existing clients to give them insights and information about the breadth of services we offer." Because I have so many clients who come to me saying, "Yeah, I don't think most of my clients right now know that I do A and B other services." And I'm
Mm.
just like, why? Why would they not? Right? So often that's a miss where you just like, this client buys this, and you don't think that that client could buy B, C, D also products. And then you could go to the marketing team and say, "Hey, like we've got a great list of existing clients who we think would be really great candidates for two of other of our products. Can you put together a campaign for them so we can see if anyone's interested in having a sales call to upsell?" Right.
Right. And so and I realize it's not complicated, but it's a complex process to kind of determine your customer's journey. But if I were to get started, if I'm a sales leader and I realize through our amazing conversations so far that my company hasn't researched through the customer's journey, like where would I go about starting that? Like can you give us kind of in a nutshell how you would build a customer journey or identify your customer's journey?
Yeah. I mean, I would sit down as a team if you do have marketing and sales departments that are separate, and literally everyone get together and talk about what's the full experience right now. What is our whole marketing machine? What is our marketing presence? How are we getting most people coming to us in a sales call? What is the outbound sales experience so far? And then just literally map out moment by moment how someone would most likely go through that journey. I think that's honestly the best way to do it. And you find holes when you map it out that way.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So to bring it down to nuts and bolts, so you're imagining that person living through the experience of all the touch points that are going through, and like you said, you're going to realize, oh, there's a hole here. There's something we're not doing. There's
Yeah.
something we're not working out as much, and then try to fill that gap with some kind of either marketing or sales tool or
Yeah.
nurturing tool that
Yeah.
enables you to continue there. So really sit in the seat of the pants of the person who is going to buy your product or your service eventually.
Yes. And when I lead journey mapping workshops, or I will literally say, okay, this is a person who saw your ad. Like, tell me all the ways you get people to see you. Great. What's their experience? Where do they go next? Then what happens? Then what happens? And we literally, I ask everyone, like, map it out. And it's different people telling me different parts of the journey because not everyone knows the whole thing. It's like, oh, then I'd probably talk to them. Okay, great. What do you
Yeah.
say? What do you give them? What's that
Yeah.
experience like?
Yeah.
And so you see the whole picture mapped out.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
like you
and it's
say,
interesting because I think you see that you as a consumer, no matter who you are, you feel that a lot when you're on social media. For example, looking on Facebook and you click on an eyeglasses company, right? They keep like throwing things at you, and most of them do it really well, and they keep showing you things and whatnot, and there's that. But I have a question for both of you. In a B2B world where it might be a little bit more of a complex service, or it's harder to reach out to them, how do you look at that? Like, let's say, for example, all three of us were consultants. We offer our services. So how do we map out that journey with our services? Like, if we, someone saw us on LinkedIn and whatnot, it might be a much more complex. It's not like selling a pair of glasses or buying a pair of shoes. So talk to me a little bit about the difference in those two kinds of customer journeys, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I can go. You can pipe
yeah.
off that, but I would say it's more strategic, and I think you have to really offer value from a B2B perspective. It can't be just a sell story because that won't always work. I work a lot more with service-based organizations. Not to say I don't work with B2B like product-based organizations too, but if you think of it from a sales perspective, the goal of that communication should not be to sell along the way. It should be to educate, inspire, inform, offer value, present yourself as a valuable partner or expert so that they're like, I have to work with you. Like, you're clearly a genius. You clearly have so much insight. You clearly have so much to offer. And you don't do it by selling at them. You do it by showing them in whatever marketing communication or business communication initiative you're putting out there. So then you are getting, as a sales team, a pretty well groomed, informed, and inspired prospect on a call. And that's what we get to as individual practitioners, as our lone selves. We're putting out our goods and getting people coming up to be like, I want what you're showing me. Can you please do that for me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Or
exactly. I think, I mean,
here's a deal.
but
Here's our new frames. There's not much they can say.
yeah, no, exactly. And I think even in B2B, I mean, yes, there's potentially more complexity, right? Because in some B2B, it can still be simple where although you're selling to a business, you're usually selling to one person, like a business owner and whatnot. So there, the customer journey becomes simpler. I could see how in a very complex sale where you need to have, like the buyers involved and the CEO involved and the CFO involved and some end users. Like, yeah, there obviously becomes a lot more complex, but I think, but nonetheless, I mean, the process is still there, and you still have to be aware of how somebody within a complex sale becomes aware of their problem or becomes aware of you. How do they educate themselves? It's just the tools will be very different, right? For if you mentioned eyeglasses, right? If I'm shopping eyeglasses, I might look at a couple articles about trends, what are the fashion trends for the upcoming year, and like looking at glasses, and like it'll be all self directed. Whereas in a more complex sale, the education process might be more referral based, might be more white paper like webinar based, might be a bit more like the tools are different, but the concept remains similar.
Yeah, you're still putting stuff out there to make yourself seem appealing, whether it's sale on glasses or here's an incredible like blog post about how to, up level your sales team's capabilities, or like whatever it might be. Having trouble with this? Hire me as a consultant. I'm Paul, right? Like, so there's all that stuff. And I would say too that it it's very rare that an ad, let's say we're using ads as our lead gen, for a service-based company will link directly to a sales call. There must be some grooming process within that. Ads get you awareness that ideally lead to a lead magnet of some sort where you're offering something of value, because they click through not to book a sales call, they click through because you're offering something that they want, right? So that's what a good ad shows. It goes to a magnet of some sort where they download something in exchange for their email. And that's really often where ads are most successful in service-based companies, where you're offering something that's of value to them. They see the ad, they want it, they click on it. And then as a result, you get their email. And then it's your job through that second stage of the marketing process to groom and disqualify leads for your sales team. And that's where there's some nuances and complexities over who defines whether they're qualified or disqualified, what makes an email worthy of a cold call or not, at what stage, if they haven't booked a call on our Calendly themselves, do we reach out to them? So it's important for companies also to have some kind of qualifying and disqualifying process too, as they get email leads to help their sales team. Whether that's a marketing job or a sales job, it's debatable depending on the company. But that's an important process too, because there's often a bottleneck. If you get a lot of emails or a lot of interest through effective lead gen magnets or machines, whatever you want to call them, and the sales team can't manage all of it, then elements fall through the cracks. And I've seen this with small businesses where there really is just the founder and maybe one other salesperson. They just can't keep up with the emails coming in through an effective ad campaign or a lead gen machine.
Yeah. And that's where the journey again becomes important. And that's what, I don't know which one of you said that earlier on, but it identifies gaps there in the system, because as you're mapping out your journey and you're like, okay, this is how people get aware of us, you have our ads and this and that, this is how we'll educate them. And then when they get to kind of like an evaluation step, if that requires this conversation with the sales team, it's very clear, like, hold on, if the process then is that then Paul, will pick on you, has to email everybody individually one by one, like clearly this is going to be, or call them and try to book an appointment and follow up manually, this might be a problem when we start scaling, right? It might be manageable when you're generating 4 or 5, a week or a month even, that's manageable. But as you're going to like, 20, 30 a week, yeah, you can clearly see that at some point, one person doing a manual follow-ups will not, and that impacts the customer journey, right? Which is also why the customer journey map is important, because if the customer experience is like, this is so great, there's a lot of great information, but then it takes me 3 days to get in touch with anybody, yeah, the experience suffers dramatically. Mm-hmm. And
yeah, exactly. So a good platform like HubSpot and an expert to build that is really important, truly, because you need to be able to effectively qualify. And even if it's a matter of, we only call those people who have clicked on our 4th ad or our 4th email, let's say. So it's an email chain, not even our 4th ad. Sorry, they've done the ad, they've got the lead magnet, they're in an email funnel. We only connect with people who have read and clicked through at least twice on our emails, let's say, right? So you can qualify that lead based on their interaction with your marketing material too.
Yes. I like the way you plugged Fab stuff there. It was very well done.
Yes, thank you.
Very sweet.
I didn't pay that.
We're supposed to plug each other. That's our job.
I do have a question though. So, we talked about increasing revenue, obviously, and building stronger customer relationships. One thing, Fab and I talked about this a lot, a lot of the, and maybe I'm going a little bit on a tangent here, as I usually do. A lot of the impetus for a sales leader is to get results, and they want to get results, and they're looking at their end of month requirements, and they're not hitting their numbers. And then so what you're saying to them is, okay, I'm telling Fab all the time, okay, it depends on their actions and their methodology. And what you're really talking about here is if we clump all of marketing and sales in one pile, is that, well, the actions and the methodology you have also transpire to marketing, because you can only do certain actions and you can only have a certain approach because you don't control the results. So it really falls into the same kind of mindset as we have in sales, is like, so the salespeople will be doing their calls or emails, whatever they're doing. They're going to have their consultative approach. And what you're saying is marketing is going to be behind them, consider the customer journey. They're going to work together, and they're also going to focus on specific actions and methodology. And they're not going to, yes, they're hoping for good results. And yes, they're going to do everything they can, and they're going to tweak and measure according to the results they get. But ultimately, they're just going to control their actions and their method. And I really like this because it falls into my philosophy of don't worry about the results, just do the best actions and have the best methodology possible. And what you're saying to me here is a good marketing methodology. You need to understand your customer's journey, and you need to understand where the touch points are with sales and what the touch points are with marketing. And you're working together to make sure that you're filling all the gaps so that they're getting, so that your customer who is going to be hopefully dealing with you is touched at all the different points to bring them to a positive answer in your direction. But you're not really going to be concerned about the bottom line number. You're just going to make sure that you're giving them that good experience to hopefully get them to convert. That was a really long-winded tangent. But what I was basically trying to say is that your actions and your methodology, as they are in sales, as a sales leader, are just as important in marketing. And if you're not focusing on your customer journey, you're leaving out 50% of what you need to do to make it successful. Because it can't always be an outbound, what are my salespeople going to say? It's got to also be, what the hell are my customers thinking? What are they feeling as they move along the journey?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you could be the best salesperson in the world, but if you're getting a bunch of garbage leads, you're not converting them. So as a salesperson, as a sales leader, you should care about supporting your marketing team to the best of your possible abilities with informing them with all your insights and information from all these many sales calls, and help them make sure that they're bringing to you the easiest, best, most convertible prospects.
Yeah.
And that just makes the whole operation run better. It helps marketing do their job better, and it helps the sales team convert better, and they're not wasting their time and energy on garbage, useless leads.
Can I ask you a really tangent question? And Fab, don't get mad at me. And no, it's not in the title. But how do you both feel about the responsibility of marketing also being tied to KPIs that are similar to the KPIs in sales, i.e., them getting if the results of what their efforts are in, them getting a cut of the upside of sales?
Do you want to start? Or
No, go ahead, Fab. You go
okay.
first.
I definitely think marketing, it needs to be held accountable to building pipeline. I think that's part of their role. And basically you do have, I mean, if we're oversimplifying, two ways to build pipeline. You have your sales team, but you have your marketing team that's helping that. So they do definitely need to be held accountable to that. In terms of like commissions, I'm a little bit more on the fence about. I don't necessarily believe it. And for a couple of reasons. One, if you are dependent on a salesperson to still make a sale, like you don't want to get into that thing where marketing is dependent on what sales does at the end of the day to make their commission. Like they could fill the pipeline with as many good leads as they want. If the salesperson is not doing their job, you know what I mean? Like, and you get into that thinking, right? Of like, well, I did everything I could. They didn't close.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
And two, I think it could potentially also reinforce bad behavior, right? Where we're just going to go to, well, you know what? If we're remunerated on commission on closing, let's just fill the pipeline with as many leads as possible, regardless
and then blame it on sales when
quality,
they don't
and then
close.
blame it on sales. So,
Okay.
Yes,
And that
accountable to
happens a lot.
pipeline. Yeah, less onto the commission side. That's my
Okay, so basically, Fab, it boils down to what we've been saying all along, is that whether you're in sales or in marketing, your KPIs should be based on your actions and your method and not on the results.
I think in marketing, yes, but I mean, what the challenge with marketing, and I mean, I'm wearing my old hat here, so maybe you'll just has a smarter answer than I do. But you can also do a lot of. I find like sometimes a lot of marketing activities are like if I'm looking back to sales, right? Like sales, they do phone calls, they send messages, they have demos, they have all that stuff, right? Which is very closely related to what their sales like. For depending on who you are on the marketing team, first of all, like some people have very little activity, right? If you're the graphic designer on the team, does it really matter that? Well, I changed the logo 6 times today. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I think marketing can be a little bit more complex in terms of the full on activity that you're doing. And it's also easy to say like, well, I optimized this ad 17 times this week, but is it really adding benefit? You know what I mean? Like that's what I find sometimes with purely looking at marketing in terms of pure activities, not always the most representative of
You
results
also
at
have
the
to
end
have
of the day.
KPI results.
Yeah. And that's why I think that for me, marketing KPIs are more in line with building pipeline. And if you could do that by launching one amazing campaign, or whether it takes you 17 campaigns, like that's on you to be more efficient, to look at your efficiency. But that's where I would look at more.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
Melissa, maybe you're wrong, and maybe
Yeah,
I'm
I
wrong.
think
You
if you have a
can,
way, I think if you have a way to qualify leads effectively that come in through the marketing machine, then I think you can assess that in addition to KPIs on each initiative, obviously. But from a sales perspective, I think marketing's main job is to make sure that the most highly qualified leads are getting to the sales team. And so
Mhm.
finding a way to measure that is effective, whatever that might be. So for example, one of my clients and they're amazing, great company. They're a property management company, but they're almost like an Airbnb in which they strategically manage rates and night stays for their clients. And their main clients are luxury homeowners or luxury vacation homeowners. So they have a place in Muskoka or a place in Miami on the ocean, and this company will manage their bookings for them as a short-term stay luxury property rental. So they need a lot of leads a day because they're always going to build to their homeowner portfolio. And it's really important that their marketing material brings in the right kind of luxury homeowner that is worth their time and energy for a salesperson to then call up. So I don't want like a shack in Halliburton on a river. I want like something on Lake Joe. And how do I define the difference, right? So there's a number of different initiatives that they've put into play in their marketing machine and a way to qualify those emails and those homeowners that are reaching out to them. And only those certain qualified individuals that are earmarked get a call from the sales team. So I think marketing's job would be to maximize the number of qualified leads that they're able to generate through their marketing material. And that means tweaking their initiative, maybe changing different channels, geo-targeting different places and tweaking that so they get more and more qualified leads coming to the sales team.
So it's also I think you're defining what Fab said, which is it's pipeline, but the qualified pipeline.
Yes, exactly. Like the quality of people coming to the pipeline, I think is where marketing can make the biggest. Yeah, because they can't be in control of like a bad salesperson or a good salesperson. But if you know that this is a highly qualified, like on paper, an ideal prospect for you, Paul sales guy, like you should be able to convert him if you do your best job. I think that's what marketing could and should do in an organization.
Okay, interesting. Well, this is really, it's really interesting, and it's a conversation that I don't think happens enough, and I don't think enough sales leaders are aware of how this relationship should happen. So I think this is very, very important, and I'm almost tempted to say that every sales leader should get periodic coaching on how marketing is going to help them and how they should be working with marketing to ensure the best advancement in their objectives.
Yeah, it's certainly in their best interest, that's for sure, to operate as a team.
Yeah,
Paul,
absolutely.
I know you have I know you have to stop in about 5 minutes. I'd like to maybe take a couple of minutes to wrap up. And what are your top takeaways today? I think, Paul, you seem to have learned a lot. Let's start with you.
My top takeaways, and I think in all honesty, I'm putting myself in the sales leaders chair. Before I started this podcast with Fab 3 years ago, or before I worked with Fab, for me, marketing was that annoying department next to us who never supplied enough leads or good leads. And in doing this podcast, I've got a tremendous respect for realize it's really one machine that's tied together. So my takeaways are, any good sales leader is going to take the time to sit down with a good marketing person to understand the customer's journey and how they can work together to build that strong customer relationship to increase the revenues, really to work together. So that's my takeaway. Have those conversations, and not the defensive conversations, but the open-minded conversations, because you both have the same goal down the line.
Yeah,
Great
totally.
Alyssa, what would be
Yeah,
your top takeaways?
and my just reminder was, think about your business as operating as you did maybe as a small shop, where as a founder or an owner or a leader, you wore both hats, right? So now you have a bigger team, you have maybe siloed departments. You used to be the single hat that managed marketing sales because you saw the connection between your efforts out there in business development and you turning it into a call and you converting it into a client. And that same organic experience has to happen now still across two different teams. So I think a sales leader and a marketing leader need to work synergistically as one organism, right? They're two heads of the same body.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I mean, obviously those two takeaways are key, and I think
as long as they're not a monster, not a two-headed monster.
Well, maybe they'll be pretty badass that way.
No, I think that's it. Like, what I really enjoy is like forcing yourself to really think of a customer's journey. Like, how do they become aware? How do they educate themselves, and all that really forces you to rethink. What's out there in terms of on the marketing side, but even as a sales leader, is like, you're right. We don't really make sure that these customers are educated before they reach us. Like we just jump into a sales presentation without realizing that, wait a minute, we don't know if they're aware that they have a problem. We don't, and then that's builds in directly to asking better questions at the end of the day, because you're forcing yourself to like, whoa, wait, when they come to us, where are they in their journey, right?
Yeah.
And how do I address that? And how do I then ask better questions to help them get to the selection, process?
Yeah. Excellent. This was
Thank you, Alyssa. Always fun. I have a great idea for next session, so I'll email you separately.
Yes.
Paul, always fun. I'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Alyssa. Thank you very much. Thanks, Fab. Alyssa, you're an amazing contributor. You always bring it up a level, so thanks for being there.
Thanks, guys. It's fun as always. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.